I already know what half of you are thinking. How many videos explaining how to get into Yakuza do we need? I know. Seeing as there's a whole bunch of other content creators who already made a video covering this, I figured to go about it the smart way and add another one to the pile. At this point, it might as well be a rite of passage for Yakuza content creators. It would be a thing of beauty, think about it. Each Yakuza creator has a video on how to get into Yakuza, and they would range from the most reasonable takes like, oh, start with Yakuza 0, to the most absurd take like a Dragon Ishin is where you want to start. Again, I realize this is a topic that many have already talked about, ranging from hardcore fans to casual fans to all kinds of articles, but now is a great opportunity because we have an upcoming game, that being Pirate Yakuza. I feel like seeing different takes on it is still worth something, and some people may want to see what I have to say about it. Granted, I did already sort of talk about it, like whenever people would ask me on streams, I would tell them my answer, but I never really made a proper, dedicated video to this topic. So, welcome everyone, fans and newcomers alike. Today I'll have the answer from the perspective of somebody who tackled the Yakuza franchise from its very inception back in 2006 with the PlayStation 2. Let's get into it. Whenever somebody would ask where to start with a franchise, any franchise, not just Yakuza, I look at the question as, how screwed am I gonna be if I jump into an entry that I've taken an interest in, rather than should I really start with the very first game, which I feel is what some may interpret it as, and that may only frustrate them, and then at some point they may end up getting frustrated enough to the point where they become vitriolic towards new fans. Call me optimistic, but I'd rather not assume the new fan is so dumb as to not know that they should ideally start with the release order. In an ideal world, no one's gonna start with Yakuza 3, 4, 5, 6, Gaiden, Dead Souls, but guess what? So many people end up starting from somewhere in the middle of a franchise. If not with one series, then it's possible they do it with another, and that's okay. Your perspective on the franchise may differ if you start with a certain game, but in my opinion, that's what makes a community so interesting. It's the different experiences everyone had and how they've come to begin their journey. If we all started with OG Yakuza 1 on the PlayStation 2, that would be kinda boring. Be like the chat people who told me they started with Yakuza Dead Souls and they're still going strong as fans today. Okay, put your pitchforks down. I'm not saying you should start with Yakuza Dead Souls. I think I'm beginning to confuse the newcomers watching this, so let me explain things as clearly as possible. First of all, before I say any more of my opinion on this topic, I'm gonna show you guys some graphs that I prepared which shows you multiple ways you could go about your journey with the Like a Dragon / Yakuza / RGG games. As a newcomer, feel free to pick one based on how invested you are. But also stick around for the end, because there's more to this topic than just graphs and quote-unquote the right order. We're going to start with the obvious release order graph, but excluding the spin-offs. And this also excludes games that didn't get localized. So this goes from left to right from the top. We have Yakuza 1 on the PlayStation 2, Yakuza 2 on the PlayStation 2, then Yakuza 3, 4, 5, which all got remastered into a collection. Yakuza 0 came after Yakuza 5. Then we have Yakuza Kiwami, which is the remake of the first game. Then Yakuza 6, and after it comes Yakuza Kiwami 2, and then we get to Yakuza Like a Dragon, which some people also just call Yakuza 7. And after that we get into a smaller title with Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name. And then we get Infinite Wealth, which people also call Yakuza 8. And finally we have Pirate Yakuza coming up. This order is mainly for those who just want to be up to speed with the main story, the characters, and where they stand at the current point of the story. You'll be fully caught up with the main story and what's happened to each of the characters, major or minor. And you won't feel confused by some character appearances here and there. You may have some characters from spin-offs show up at a couple of points, but you're going with this order purely to be knowledgeable about the main story, not the spin-offs. And with the Kiwami remakes, I decided to treat them as separate games because they do change quite a bit and add some story bits. However, if you want to play the remakes instead of the originals and call it a day, you're more than welcome to. But if you start with the originals and go with this exact order, you'll also be able to see how much the games have evolved over time, and just how much was added to the combat and the activities you're able to do around the different cities across the series. But ultimately, the choice is yours. Now, if you're committed enough to add even more to your experience and expand your horizons with the additional dish of spin-offs, we'll go over to the release order list that includes spin-offs. Going by this order, you will truly not miss any kind of reference whatsoever. Of course, maybe except for the Japanese-only titles. At this point of time, I can only think of a singular reference you may not fully get in Infinite Wealth or Yakuza 8 if you didn't play RGG Kenzan. But again, that's a game game that didn't get localized, and not everyone will go through the commitment to play that game. Anyway, we now have a bigger list now that spin-offs are on the table. So we start off similarly with original Yakuza 1, original Yakuza 2, Yakuza 3, Yakuza 4, and then we have Yakuza Dead Souls, which is a zombie shooter spin-off that isn't canon but gets referenced a few times later. Carrying on, we have Yakuza 5, Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami, Yakuza 6, Yakuza Kiwami 2, and then we have a bit of an outlier with the Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise entry, which may make you even wonder if it's actually a Yakuza or like an RGG game. The short answer is yes, it still very much is an RGG game. This is an adaptation of Fist of the North Star done by RGG Studio, where they put their own original story using the characters from the manga, and they also make some new characters of their own. There's even a Kiryu skin DLC, and actually a bunch of Yakuza surprises in there that I will refrain from saying, since this is aimed at newcomers. The game plays almost exactly as an average Yakuza game does, with its progression and open district activities. Even the game logo looks similar to Yakuza's in Japanese. But anyway, back to the list. Then we move on to Judgment, a spin-off that takes place in the same universe as the mainline Yakuza games, just with a different protagonist. So it is canon, but it has almost nothing to do with the mainline series characters, and it tries to be its own thing. Moving on, we have Yakuza Like a Dragon, or Yakuza 7, and then we get to Lost Judgment, which is the sequel to Judgment. Then we have a bit of an odd game that I wasn't initially sure where to place, but I decided to stick with the release order as initially planned. So Like a Dragon Ishin is actually a remaster slash remake, though I think it's more of a remaster. The original Ishin came out in 2014 and we didn't get it outside of Japan. We only got this remaster, which was a very recent release in 2023. Story-wise, it's very detached, much more so than something like the Judgment games, which those at least take place around the same time as some of the mainline games. But anyway, after this game we have Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, Infinite Wealth or Yakuza 8, and finally Pirate Yakuza. Once again, going about your journey in this order, you will basically know everything there is to know when it comes to the RGG universe. You know, except for the few games that weren't officially localized. And compared to the previous list, if you go with this order, you will see a more extended evolution of the game mechanics and how they changed over time. Also, some of these spin-offs will actually help you recognize some character appearances or even references in some of the mainline games. So if you got the time and interest for a peak journey, give this order a try. Next up, we're going with the chronological order. Most people advise newcomers to start with Yakuza 0, so this probably looks close to what many end up doing, at least with the first few games. This list is also kind of different in structure, as you can see. This is because a few games kinda don't matter when it comes to the chronological order specifically, so I'll just throw them in a corner where you can play them whenever you want. This time, I also will not separate the Kiwamis because this is a list that focuses on the story. Some spin-offs, like the Judgment games, are definitely closer tied to the mainline games compared to something like, say, Ishin, so they will be included in the list. But anyway, this list kicks off with Yakuza 0, then you go to Yakuza 1 or Kiwami, then Yakuza 2 or Yakuza Kiwami 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Judgment, Yakuza Like a Dragon or Yakuza 7, Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, Lost Judgment, Infinite Wealth, and finally Pirate Yakuza. Going through the games like this, you'll see the events as they happen in order in the timeline, and once again, the choice is yours. Now that we're done with the lists, let's snap back to reality. If someone comes up to you and says they're looking to get into Yakuza and you show them this, they'll probably be like, you know what, never mind. The thing is, every person looking to get into the franchise will not be the same. Some may be just intimidated when you tell them they have to play like 15 games in the order that is correct to you. Others will be just like, you know, give me an order and I'll get to it. My personal recommendation depends on the person. If someone has taken a small, modest interest where it's clear they're not about to sit through 15 plus games right away, I'll tell them to start with any game from the series that really appeals to them. If they like that game, chances are they'll go back and play the other ones, and from there, it's a matter of time before they go through the whole series. There is something that I think many people don't acknowledge in this conversation about Yakuza, and it's that most games, not all games, do a good job at introducing you to the world and making you aware of the stakes of whatever is happening and the gravity of the things that it gives weight to. For example, almost every game with Kiryu, they mention that he's a legendary Yakuza that was feared by everyone. Every game basically shows part of why he's so legendary. They really hammer it in sometimes and keep on bringing it up. Having knowledge of his journey from the other games enhances your understanding of Kiryu and what exactly it is he went through. But when it comes down to it, I think almost every game does a good job at introducing the characters you play as and the characters characters you meet. I've spoken to many people that started with Yakuza 4 or Yakuza 5, and in spite of that, this logic applies to those games very much as well. It's not just about starting with the recent games that is quote-unquote bad. Yakuza 4 and 5 are a few games into Kiryu's journey, and they still keep telling you how legendary he is, so you'll definitely be able to understand the story and enjoy it. But you'll definitely enjoy it more knowing what he went through in the previous games. That's only natural after all. And also, shout out to all the people that I've met that actually did start with Yakuza Dead Souls and did stick around still. Those people are living proof that it doesn't really matter which entry you start with. If you like what Yakuza offers to you, you're set. Bottom line, if you've really taken a liking to the series, go with one of these lists, whichever one appeals to you. But if you only want a taste, just to like test the waters, play any game that speaks to you the most and see where you go from there. People usually recommend starting with the Yakuza 0 or even the Judgment games. If you truly want to see the evolution of the series, start with the original Yakuza 1 and work your way from there. Do whatever your heart tells you, but most importantly, you're here to have fun, so just enjoy the ride. Thank you guys for tuning into this. If there's any newcomers watching this and they felt like they got an answer out of the video, then I'm glad to have helped. I hope you enjoy your journey with this gem of a franchise. And if you want more Yakuza content, my channel is a haven for them, so consider giving this video a like and a subscribe, as those would help the channel more than you think. As for veterans, I also want to thank you if you're watching this, and I'm curious to see what you think of my take on how to approach the franchise. What do you guys have to say about this? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you all so much again for watching, and I'll see ya next time. Bye bye now.